Hey guys, happy Monday. It's time for Down to the Wire on the Vegas Insider Network presented by BetMGM. I'm your host today, Joe Madden. You can catch me here every Wednesday and Fridays, and then the odd fill-in days like today. It's Monday today, you guys. We've got Monday Night Football, and we have a great show. And for all the Canadian viewers out there, happy Canadian Thanksgiving. And if you're American, want to celebrate with us, not a problem, you guys. Always a great night to have a big feast on Monday Night Football. Today on the show, I have two guests for you. Will Hill will be joining us, as well as Vince Atkins. Now, we're going to jump right into my best bet of the show today. We're looking at this Monday Night Football game between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to take Davante Adams here of the Las Vegas Raiders for an anytime touchdown. We can get that at plus 105 over at BetMGM. We just look at what kind of game the Raiders have to play if they want to beat the Chiefs tonight. They're going to have to get that ball passing through the air, aerial attack. Derek Carr can bring an aerial attack. And we look at the defense of the Kansas City Chiefs. They are not strong against the pass. 27th against the pass so far this season, allowing 268.3 passing yards per game. Davante Adams is a prime target for Derek Carr. He already has 3 touchdowns on the season. I see tonight him getting his 4th. So give me Davante Adams for an anytime touchdown at plus 105 over at BetMGM. Okay, so I told you that Vince Atkins will be in later. He is actually our handicapper heat check for tonight. So it's time. Let's jump right into it. Presented by VegasInsider.com, your home of the best expert picks in the business since 1997. Today, we are recognizing Vince Atkins, who can be found on Twitter at SB Breakers. Vince destroyed the books on Sunday with a 6-1 record, extending in his NFL win streak to 16-4 in his last 20 picks. Overall, he is 37-12, which is a smoking hot 76% in the NHL this season. If you're watching on YouTube, save $10 on Vince's Monday Night Football picks or props by clicking the link below in the description. That's $10 discount will be applied at checkout. If you're listening on the podcast version, you guys, head on over to Vegas Insider Expert Picks page and take advantage of Vince's hot streak, or click his promo on the Vegas Insider homepage. That's your handicapper heat check. Stay hot, bettors. You guys, it's time already to bring in William Hill. Will, welcome to the show.
Joe, so good to see you. It's been a busy sports weekend, really, from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all the way until today, where we had kind of low. It was just nonstop action with all the playoff baseball, college football, NFL. So it's a great time of the year. I always love October, and I love joining you. So appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I love having you here. We've got some great action coming up in this week. Before we move on to what's happening on the field tonight, let's talk about the LA Rams. They lost again yesterday to the Cowboys. They just aren't getting things going. What are your thoughts on the Rams?
We are going to have a new Super Bowl champion because the Rams are not going to win the Super Bowl. The Rams are going to miss the playoffs, and you can get that plus 115. I can't believe it's plus money at BetMGM. It's really a situation where they're just not very good. They went all in. They won their championship, and that's going to do it. They're not going to be back this year. They're not going to be a contender. They're 2-3. They can't protect Stafford. They can't run the ball. They have nothing on offense other than Cooper Kupp. And like I said, they're 2-3. Look at the rest of their schedule. They have road games against Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Kansas City, and the Chargers all on the road. They still have to play the 49ers. They have 2 games against the Seahawks, which all of a sudden don't look like such easy games. This is a 5 or 6 win team. The Rams are not repeating as champions. The Rams are not going to the playoffs.
I love that bet. They're taking them not to go to the playoffs at plus 115 over at BetMGM. It looks like a moneymaker from what we've seen out of the Rams so far this season. I can't trust in them. That's for sure, Will.
You know, it reminds me a little bit of the Lakers a couple of years ago where they went all in. They traded all their draft picks to get Anthony Davis. And you know what? They won a championship. Yes, it was in the bubble, but they won a championship. And we haven't really heard from them since. They haven't competed for a championship since, haven't won a championship. Feels like the Rams are going down that same path. Now, look, if you're a Rams fan, hey, winning a championship, even if it's one, is really hard to do, but doesn't look like they're going to be back. And if you go back and look at last year, I know every team that wins a championship has a degree of luck. Luck is part of it, but They were a 4 seed, and they got to host the NFC title game. They got to host the Super Bowl and do it against 10 teams. So their path was really fortunate, I would say. And just look at that roster. I don't know that Stafford's going to make it the whole year. Every time he drops back, he gets hit. Like I said, they can't block, they can't run, they can't protect. There's just a lot of things they don't do very well. This is not a great team, and they have a brutal schedule going forward. I mean, you have to play at the Packers, at the Bucks, at the Chiefs, at the Chargers. I'm not sure how many of those games are going to win. And as we know, San Francisco owns them. You can still get San Francisco, I think, minus like $1.70 or so to win the division. So it's getting a little pricey, but I would think the 49ers probably win that division and win it going away. And I just don't think the Rams make the playoffs. The wild cards are probably going to be some combination of whoever doesn't win the division between Green Bay and Minnesota. Dallas or Philly will take a spot. The Giants are probably going to find their way to 9 or 10 wins. That would be, if you go Giants, Cowboys, Vikings, those are your 3 wild cards right there, assuming Green Bay wins the division or whoever doesn't win the division. It's going to be hard for the Rams to get to 9 or 10. To me, this is like a 6-win team. Rams aren't going to make it.
Yeah, that Super Bowl hangover is hitting them definitely hard this year.
Both teams from the Super Bowl for sure.
Absolutely. I love where you're going with that. Let's talk some Monday night action. We have football tonight with the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Kansas City Chiefs, divisional rivals here. The Raiders finally getting a win, Will, in their last matchup against the Denver Broncos. The Chiefs rolling in here so strong, 3-1 on the season. Where are you going with this matchup?
I'm pretty much looking to fade the Raiders every week. I just think they came into the season overrated because of their year last year where they won 10 games, but 4 of them were in overtime. And we know that's not something that's easy to duplicate. There's some good fortune when you win 10 games and 4 of them are in overtime. And for me, the Raiders have just been overrated ever since. Now, it's not my nature to lay 7.5 in an NFL game, especially a divisional game. So I'm going to try to find some ways to bet the Chiefs other ways. Team total over 30.5 is, I think, a good bet. Since Mahomes took over in Kansas City in 2018, 8 games against the Raiders. The Chiefs are 7-1. 3 of those 7 wins, they've scored 40 plus. 5 of those 7, they've scored 30 plus. I expect the Chiefs to score plenty of points tonight. I expect them to win the game. Maybe Derek Carr, yes, to throw an interception is a good bet. Right around minus 115. You figure the Chiefs get a lead and the Raiders have to pass. The game script could lead to an interception there. And this, I think, is a good talking point for bettors. If there's a number where it's close to your number, but you don't quite like it, live betting is a great tool because even though this line is 7.5, if the Chiefs go 3 and out, you're probably going to see a 6.5. Or if the Raiders get the ball first and drive past midfield, you're probably going to see this go to 6.5. So I'm not in the mood to lay 7.5. If it starts out pretty well for the Raiders where you get 6.5, I'll jump in on Kansas City, but I think the Chiefs team total over is a good bet. I think Carr to throw an interception is a good bet. The Raiders have really been owned by Kansas City. I expect Kansas City to put up plenty of points. Worries me a little bit. They have the Bills next week. They had Tampa last week, which is a big revenge spot. So it's sort of a sandwich game, but I think the Chiefs will be up for it. It's a division game. It's Monday Night Football. I expect the Chiefs to win. If you want to put the Chiefs in some of your money line parlays with, I don't know, some of the baseball teams maybe you like tomorrow that are bigger favorites, the Braves, the Yankees, you can sort of get an even money bet. That might be a way to go, but I do think the Chiefs win and score plenty of points on their way to a victory tonight.
I like how you mentioned sandwich games and different situations that are hard on teams. I think the biggest sandwich game so far this season was when the Chiefs played the Colts. That was the only loss that they had so far this season with the Bucs on deck. I think you're right. I think with this being a divisional game, they come out strong against the Raiders here. It's not looking good for this Raiders team. They're going to have to get that ball nice and deep to Devontae Adams. I have him for an anytime touchdown because that's the only way the Raiders can keep this tight. We know that, but man, this is not going to be a pretty game.
Yeah, I think the Raiders do. I mean, they have the weapons that with, like you mentioned, Adams, Renfro, and Waller haven't done a lot. They have Jacobs. So I could see a scenario where the Chiefs are up 31-17. They control the game, and then the Raiders get a cheap touchdown at the end to make it like 31-24 and end up covering. If you have the 7.5, that 7.5 is such a key number. So I'm just not in the nature of laying 7.5 in a division game. We saw, the big favorites didn't do well yesterday with Green Bay losing, Jacksonville losing, Minnesota not covering. It's hard to lay points in this league. The teams are so evenly matched. As much as we think, this team's so much better than the others, it's really a league filled with parity where there's 2 or 3 really good teams, there's 2 or 3 really bad teams, and a whole bunch of okay teams.
Okay, let's move on to some Sunday action. We're looking ahead for week 6 NFL, you guys. We have the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Miami Dolphins. Well, I'm really interested to get your take on this. We know Tua is out. Teddy Bridgewater went out for the Miami Dolphins as well on that first offensive drive for the Miami Dolphins this weekend for concussion protocols. What are your thoughts on this upcoming Sunday's game?
Week 6. Where does the time go? We're already into week 6. It feels like it was the first game the other, a couple of days ago. It goes by so fast. I like Miami here getting a field goal. I think Minnesota's a little overrated based on their 4-1 record. They've had a really easy schedule. They've benefited from some close wins. This is only their second true road game. Their only other true road game was in Philly, where they just got stomped. They have not played good defense. They played, a bad Saints team that was all beat up. They got a bad Bears team where they were lucky to hang on yesterday. They beat Detroit. And I think this line at +3 for Miami assumes that Bridgewater is going to be out. I'm not so sure he's going to be out. Reading all the reports, they were just extra careful yesterday with everything that happened with Tua. But from everything I read, Bridgewater passed concussion protocol. It's more of a rib issue. So I think there's a chance Bridgewater plays. If he does play, this is probably going to be a pick 'em. If he doesn't play, it probably stays at 3. And you know what? You can buy your way out. You can leave it. You could just take Minnesota on the money line and as a nice little middle. But I think there's a decent chance Bridgewater plays. I know Tyreek Hill's on the injury report. I think he's going to play. To me, this is a strange line. I think this closes more of a pick 'em. I think there's a decent shot Bridgewater's the quarterback, and Minnesota's just not a good defense. You can look at the record and say they're 4-1, but they are not good against the run, not good against the pass. They're going to have a hard time no matter who's playing quarterback. You or I could play quarterback. Waddle and Hill are going to be open all day against the secondary. So I like Miami here getting the points.
Yeah, I like your take on this, grabbing this early, then if you have to, taking the other side, because I hear you. I really do think he will probably come out here in this one. It's going to be an interesting game. Let's talk some college football. Week 7 of college football. Wow, we are steamrolling on the seasons for both of these. I'm dreading come February when we have the Super Bowl and everything's said and done, but got a lot of games in between. We have Alabama taking on Tennessee this weekend. Tennessee, the dog at home, 5-0 on the season, but we know Alabama really has owned them. What are you liking in this one?
I think this is a rare opportunity. We're going to actually get Alabama at a little bit of a discount. I think the public is actually going to be on the underdog. This is going to be a public dog, which always makes you nervous because we all react to the last thing we see. And, we saw Tennessee beat the hell out of LSU and win that game, win it convincingly on the road as a short favorite. And we saw Alabama lucky to beat A&M, 24-point favorites. People that bet Alabama are mad at Alabama. So you say, you know what? Alabama's not any good this year. They're not as great as they usually are. I'm going to take the points with Tennessee. I'd be careful. Saban, Alabama, off of a bad performance, what's essentially like a loss for them, where that's going to be a tough week of practice. They're going to hear about all their mistakes, all their turnovers. I expect the best effort from Bama this week. I think they'll be buttoned up. I think they'll dominate in the trenches. I actually like Alabama laying the 7.5. I think they win this game by double digits. And Joe, I don't know if you looked at the schedule too much this weekend for college football, but between Chiefs, Bills, Cowboys, Eagles, all the college football games, Bama, Tennessee, Michigan, Penn State, USC, Utah, TCU, Oklahoma State. Make sure your fridge has plenty of cold beverages. Make sure you have snacks with the baseball playoffs added to it. It is just a great sports weekend. This weekend coming up might be the best sports weekend of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be incredible. I've already told everyone that I'm watching games this coming weekend, all weekend, and no one to even bug me at all will, because I hear you. Such great games on the schedule. Now, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on Down to the Wire. Where can people find you?
At Not the Will Hill on Twitter. Then Sunday mornings, 11 a.m. Eastern. It's called First and Gold. We preview all the NFL games. Twitch.tv/Goldboys. That's presented by Pickett Sports. So appreciate you having me. It's always fun talking with you, Joe. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and best of luck in all of your bets tonight. Can't wait to have you on again.
All right. Go Devontae Adams.
Thank you. Best of luck tonight. Okay, you guys, that was Will Hill. Make sure you go over and give him a follow. Always full of so much great information. Before we move on to Vince Atkins, I want to tell you about our friends from BetMGM. Kick off the new pro football season with the king of sportsbooks. Sign up with BetMGM using bonus code VIBONUS, and your first wager is risk-free, up to $1,000. That's VIBONUS, all one word, no spaces, and your first wager is risk-free, up to $1,000. Visit betmgm.com for all terms and conditions. BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. Okay, you guys, it's time to welcome on Vince Atkins to the show. Vince, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. How's it going, Joe?
It's going great. I want to thank you for joining us. You have absolutely been killing it. You've been taking it to the books left, right, and center. Your record this weekend was absolutely phenomenal. What's your secret?
Well, I don't know if it's a secret, but we're going to talk about a lot of data and trends and systems here, and those are certainly an important part of the handicapping. And I would love to say that 76% on the NFL for the season is going to last forever. I'm not sure that we can do 76% for the entire season here. But I think we do have a real edge over the books with all the data that we're looking at.
Absolutely. You are rolling so hot. I want to get your take on a couple of the games from this weekend. We had the Pittsburgh Steelers send out Kenny Pickett against the Buffalo Bills. This team wasn't able to get things together. Buffalo won at 38-3. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, this was a game that got away early. And so, I want to look back at some of these games, but also sort of look ahead as well. So there was a lot of noteworthy things in this game, being 31-3 by the half, and some of the interesting statistics that come out of this game. So I'm going to look at a couple of those. Starting with, I'm just looking at the Steelers, and the Steelers are a great team to look at individually because they've been consistent for so long. And in the past it was quarterback and coach that had been there forever. Now it's just the coach and the infrastructure of that team that's been there forever. But the Steelers don't get blown out like that very often. So going back to 2000, so we're going back 22 years now. They've only been lost by 20 plus points 15 times over that stretch, but they've actually bounced back really strong next game. So we look forward to next week with the Steelers hosting Tampa Bay. They are 12-3 overall, 13-2 against the spread, coming off a huge blowout loss. But there is kind of a negative factor to this game, and one that you might not think of. If you look at the stat sheet from Pittsburgh, it's 364 total yards in this game, only turned those into 6 points. That's a real anomaly. 364 total yards for teams that actually pretty strong, at least an above average effort offensively, to only turn those into 6 points. So we want to look forward. I looked at a couple of different differentiating points here. So teams that gained at least 300 yards last game, but scored less than 7 points. Historically, those teams are just 47-73 against the spread the next week. So under 40% covers the next week coming off such a game. This actually also occurred with Jacksonville against Houston on Sunday. They had 422 yards total offense in that game against the Texans, but only scored 6 points. But even paring this down a little further, teams are just 3-13 against the spread historically when they gained at least 350 yards last game, but scored 3 or fewer points. So that's something that's going to be interesting to look at for the Steelers this week as they host the Bucs as a heavy dog. A couple other notes on the interesting side of this game for Buffalo going into obviously their huge showdown next weekend with the Chiefs. So obviously probably the biggest thing that you took away from Buffalo's performance was their long passes, and particularly the 98-yard Gabe Davis touchdown on the first drive of the game. So you might think going forward, that's kind of a bit of a fluky thing. How often our team's going to get 90-plus yard touchdowns? So I'll look back historically going forward to this next game. How did teams do after they had an 85-plus yard pass play last game? So obviously a really significant pass play. I'm pretty sure almost all of those turned into touchdowns. Those teams in the next week are actually 36-23 against the spread after they had that 85-yard play. So there might be something a little more repeatable than you would think about the 85-yard plus pass play the last game going forward. Finally, something a bit noteworthy is here that Pittsburgh went 0 for 3 on fourth downs in this game. Part of the reason, obviously, that they only scored the 6 points. So teams that got at least 3 fourth down stops last game are actually 56% against the spread historically in the next game. So that's interesting for this game. I pointed out from one other reason, because there was a real anomaly that happened in the Detroit New England game on Sunday, in which Detroit went 0 for 6 on fourth downs. I'm not sure everyone realized that, but missing on 6 fourth downs is really historic. Just going back to 2001, the extent of our database here, no team had ever missed more than 4 fourth downs in a game. So not only did Detroit clip that, they actually went 2 more than any team over the last 21 years. So you think about Buffalo getting those stops in Pittsburgh, and then New England going to Cleveland next week. They got all those fourth down stops, and how that might affect the offense and defense on each side of that game going forward.
Yeah, it was crazy to see what the Patriots were able to do in that game. I couldn't believe what I was seeing because it was a team that I really wasn't that high on yesterday to come out and play so well against the Detroit Lions. So that was quite the feat.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the Detroit offense to put up such a poor performance in that game was a little bit, obviously New England's a little bit tougher than some of the defenses they've faced, perhaps, but to go there and really have no success putting points on the board at all was really kind of surprising.
Yeah, absolutely was. What were your takeaways on the Dallas Cowboys and the LA Rams yesterday? Now, this was an interesting one. Lots of people thinking this Rams team would be a lot stronger. We know how well they did last year, just seemed to have that Super Bowl hangover.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Obviously, I think it's pretty well known at this point some statistics relative to the Super Bowl loser the next season and their early season struggles, and Cincinnati hasn't avoided that fate either. But the Super Bowl champion for the next season having a struggle is a bit more surprising. But I do have a couple of, or at least one interesting stat here relative to that Super Bowl victory last season. Obviously, the Rams sitting at just 2-3 now. It was a bit of a tough game yesterday in which they fell behind with the defense, a touchdown early, and that doesn't really set up well playing Dallas and their ability to get to the pass rusher, and also the Rams' sort of inability to protect Matthew Stafford throwing the ball recently. But they are the defending Super Bowl champions, now on a 2-game losing streak, just 2-3 overall. So I looked back how do Super Bowl champions do on losing streaks? It doesn't really happen that often, even just 2-game losing streaks, as we're talking about the Rams now. But going back to November 2013, Super Bowl champions 10-1 in their next game, coming off a 2+ game losing or on a 2+ game losing streak. So they don't really, a champion like that doesn't really let those losing streaks fester very often. It's happened twice in the last 3 years. Kansas City, in their Super Bowl defense, never had a 2-game losing streak, impressively. But Tampa Bay and New England, each of the last 3 years here, both got in that situation once. And they both won by 20+ points the next game while on that 2-game losing streak. So something to watch for the Rams here in a game where they're expected to win big against Carolina. And that's sort of interesting for a few reasons. That line, 10 points, may be growing, actually. I would check throughout the day to day. I know PJ Walker expected to get the start in that game. So I don't think the Rams are definitely going to be closing as a double-digit favorite, despite the 2-game losing streak. So that's, obviously an interesting situation that warrants a look. And I look back to 2010, teams are 21-7 against the spread as double-digit favorites on multiple game losing streaks. So the Rams are going to qualify for that this week. So teams, when they get that big line, it doesn't seem warranted because they're struggling. They've lost a couple straight games. Usually it is warranted, and actually is probably not big enough.
That is a great stat because in my head, I don't know if I can trust Matt Stafford, but if the information is backing it up, might be a good place to go against what everyone is going to be looking at. That Matt Stafford just keeps throwing those interceptions, keeps shooting this Rams team in their feet. So it's going to be a good one. Let's talk some Monday Night Football. Any thoughts on tonight's game with the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Kansas City Chiefs here, Vince?
Yeah, obviously an interesting divisional game that we've seen KC have some recent success against the Raiders. The Raiders finally getting their first win of the season last week against the Broncos. So I'm going to look at a couple of team trends here to start with, and then one interesting league-wide nugget here at the end. These diverge a little bit with the team trends really favoring Kansas City, and this system at the end favoring the Raiders. Well, let's start with a big team trend here. And this one goes back to December 2016. The Raiders 0-15 against the spread on the road, coming off a non-season opening win, or non-season opening home game where they scored 24+ points. So obviously the Raiders put up 32 points in their biggest offensive effort of the season last week in the win over Denver. So 0-15 against the spread and just 1-14 overall in those games on the road off a non-season opening home game where they scored 24+ points. So you think about last week, comfortable environment, put it on Denver's defense. Now they go on the road in a tougher situation. Haven't found a lot of success offensively or as a team in these games. Speaking of why they might need some offensive success, obviously this is a high total game that's been 51.5 pretty consistently the last couple days. It's maybe a half point off that number. But that really does not set up well for the Raiders. And this one just goes back to November 2020. So this is a recent trend. With a very, very similar team here. Some of those pieces, Carr, Jacobs, Waller for the Raiders. Raiders are 0-7 overall and 0-7 against the spread in games where the total's over 51. So you think
Ouch.
games are expected to be a shootout. We have that tonight. 7 straight losses, and it failed to cover 7 straight times. They've actually were favored in 3 of those games, losing those all outright too. It's actually been active twice this season as well. Weeks 1 and 2 against the Chargers and Cardinals, and the Raiders' first 2 losses of the season. So this team, you think about how Derek Carr likes to play, a bit more control. Even though they have the weapons for shootouts, perhaps has not been where they found their success recently, is indicated by their poor performance in high total games. I do have one more team trend on the other side here, looking at the Chiefs, and coming off a win as an underdog. So that doesn't happen all the time for Kansas City now, because you don't see Kansas City as an underdog very often anymore, but they were last week in Tampa Bay in that 41-31 victory. So the Chiefs, this is going back to 2013, coming off a win as an underdog where they covered by at least 6 points. So obviously last week in that 10-point win as a dog, they easily covered that mark. The Chiefs are 11-0 against the spread in this situation. They've actually won 9 straight games outright as well. The last 3 times it was active have all been double-digit straight-up victories for the Chiefs.
Wow.
So coming off a win as a dog where they covered, which is going to by 6+ points, that's going to happen most of the time when you win as an underdog. 11-0 against the spread, just predating the Andy Reid era throughout the entirety of the Andy Reid era as well. Now, I will point out one interesting nugget here for Raiders backers as well. Obviously, this is a unique divisional game, and what makes it particularly unique is that Kansas City pounded Las Vegas when they met the second time last season, Week 14, with the Chiefs winning 48-9. So you look back historically, teams that lost by at least 38 points last time they faced this team cover in the next meeting 56.3% of the time. Well, it's a divisional game, as this is here, so you have divisional familiar opponents, and that next meeting's not coming very far down the line, either the same season or the next season. Those teams have covered 60% of the time. So something that might be a little fresh in Bears' mind, even though it was last season, the way Kansas City really pounded the Raiders in that game last season might be creating a little value on the number for the, generally speaking, these teams are going to be underdogs, and that perception is creating some value on their number.
Vince, I love all the stats you just threw at us. Thank you so much for breaking that one down and giving us all of that information. I cannot believe how the Chargers have done with totals over that 51.5. That is just crazy. Let's talk some baseball. We got baseball playoffs. Is 4 games tomorrow, with Philadelphia taking on Atlanta, Seattle and Houston, Cleveland and the Yankees, and San Diego and the LA Dodgers. What are your thoughts on these 4 games?
Yeah, so it's a pretty unique situation here, and something with the new playoff format that you'll see once in a while past the first round or ALDS or whatever the first round wild card has been. But this is a situation where the way the schedule sets up, all 4 teams are coming in on the road with less rest, but also not having their pitching staff set up. And by the way that wild card schedule set up, it almost has to be the case where these teams are throwing non-aces, and actually they're not the number 2 stars either. So you're seeing the number 3 and 4 starters for these road teams traveling in game 1 of the series to face the ace of the 4 home teams. So I was going to pick a game, maybe you're going to break it down, but I actually found a single stat that covers all 4 games, because these are, as I mentioned, they're sort of similar situations here. And because of that, all 4 of these teams are heavy underdogs. Seattle being the heaviest of the 4 currently going into tomorrow's game, but all 4 of the road teams are heavy underdogs in these series openers of the division series. So I found one great stat. This one goes back to 2016, and teams that are at least plus 150 underdogs in series openers. So all 4 of these teams currently qualify and pretty safely qualify for that going to tomorrow. So series openers, teams that are at least plus 150 underdogs are 2-25 since 2016. So obviously there's been a lot of profit over those last 6 years betting against those big underdogs in the first game of a playoff series.
2-25, a straight up for those teams. What a great stat to know before going in and betting any of these teams. Out of the 4, is there anyone that you have a stronger feeling on than the others that could break this trend?
It's going to be interesting looking at the slate of games. One thing I will shot out. Obviously, the road teams are coming in hot, and that does actually tend to have success going into the into playoff games. So I'm going to look at probably out of the four. I think as an underdog, I'd probably look at Cleveland as my favorite of the four. Obviously, there's still a little bit of handicapping to do tonight going into tomorrow's games, but Cleveland, because their bullpen's so strong, they have a solid number 3 in Cal Quantrill going tomorrow. And the Yankees, you think about the 4 aces across those teams and who they're going to be starting tomorrow. Garrett Cole, while maybe having the best raw stuff, and maybe being the best pitcher of the 4, has been the most inconsistent this season. And that's something if you're looking for a big underdog in game 1. You have a starter who's shown some inconsistency, might be a spot where you can see the underdog take things.
Well, you definitely just gave Guardian fans a glimmer of hope in that matchup with the New York Yankees tomorrow. Vince, I want to thank you so much for joining me over here on Down to the Wire on the Vegas Insider Network, presented by BetMGM. Can you let everyone know what kind of packages they can find over at Vegas Insider for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I do 4 sports: MLB, NFL, NCAA football, and NBA, and those all 4 are going to be playing within the next week and a half here. So yeah, you can get rest of season postseason packages for the MLB. You can, if you're looking for something tonight, I have both a total play in the NFL Monday night game. We didn't talk about the total for a reason in this game, as well as a player prop. But yeah, college football, I'm over 60% there. We talked about great NFL success so far this season, but being over 60% in college football is nothing to sneeze at either. And then NBA packages coming up within the next week. So, this is it's a great time to be a sports fan. It's a great time to bet on sports as well with all these. And I have the 4 sports that are going to be going on here covered, and you can find those all at Vegas Insider, or you can see my Twitter handle there at SB Breakers if you want more trends. If you like what you heard tonight, not only do we see those, you'll see some additional ones shared there throughout the week. So.
I love it. You guys make sure you go over and give Vince a follow on Twitter. Grab his packages over at vegasinsider.com. Remember, he is the handicapper of the day today, so you can grab a discount in the link below. And if you're listening audio, just head on over to Vegas Insider. Vince, again, thank you so much for joining me today.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me, Joe. And let's keep going on a successful season.
Thank you. All the best. Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you. Okay, you guys, that was Vince Atkins. You definitely want to check out his packages. He is so hot at the moment. This brings me to my second best bet of the night, NHL. We're going to turn to hockey, you guys. I absolutely love hockey, and we have a great matchup tomorrow night between the Tampa Bay Lightning and the New York Rangers. Now, if you did not know the season started, it started over the weekend with only 2 teams starting, but full swing tomorrow. The Tampa Bay Lightning are coming in here on the road to take on the New York Rangers. And I'm telling you guys, you got to take the New York Rangers on that money line. You can get them over at BetMGM at -115. They have this game circled and circled big in red. The Tampa Bay Lightning were the team that kicked them out of the Eastern Conference Finals in 6 last season. New York's going to come back. They're going to answer this one. Now, strong team trends for the home team when these two match up, with the home team going 5-1 in the last 6 meetings, and the Tampa Bay Lightning really struggling in New York, going 1-4 in their last 5 meetings in New York. I think what we will see in this one, it's a strong defensive game. We know the Rangers' defense has been phenomenal, led by Adam Fox. We also have Igor Shesterkin in goal, who is lights out, one of the best goaltenders in the business. He's going to stand on his head in this one. They want payback on Tampa. So give me the New York Rangers on that money line, -115. Such great value over there. You guys, if you like what we have here on the show, you're going to absolutely love the app. So you want to definitely head on over to Google, wherever you get your apps, and check out the brand new Vegas Insider app. We've got up-to-date, easy-to-navigate odds for every major sport. We have all your latest shows, best bet videos, podcasts, props, trends, futures, news, all for free on the Vegas Insider app. Download the Vegas Insider app right now on Apple and Android. Bet better with the Vegas Insider app. You guys, the show has flown by today. I want to thank you all for joining us here. Quick recap of my best bets of the day. Get it in quick. Davante Adams for that anytime touchdown tonight. He plays with the Las Vegas Raiders over at BetMGM. It's plus 105. You guys, I tell you, Derek Carr has to get that ball deep if they have any chance to beat Kansas City tonight. Davante Adams, we know he's a top target. He's going to get a touchdown. And then we're going to look at hockey for tomorrow night, taking the New York Rangers on the money line at minus 115 over at BetMGM versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. I want to remind you guys, I am here on the regular Wednesday and Friday. I've got already guests lined up for both nights. Both are going to be great shows this week. So I want to thank you for joining me here tonight on Down to the Wire. I'm your host, Joe Madden, and it was a pleasure to be here on this beautiful Monday with you guys. Best of luck in all of your bets tonight. Keep smiling and let's make some freaking money.